Usually your lasting impression is from your last game, but that's not the case with Ohio State. The Buckeyes may have won the Rose Bowl, but they didn't win the game. A loss to Michigan ruined what could have been a great season, which is what fans expect this season. Ohio State an overwhelming favorite to win the Big Ten, and C.J. Stroud is favored to win the Heisman.
Everything that we get has to be earned. Nothing will be given. Just because we had the number one offense last year doesn't mean we'll have it again. Got to go out there and take it.
And you'd think the Buckeyes receiving corps would be at least a little bit depleted with the loss of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave both going in the first round of the draft, but that certainly wasn't the case in the Rose Bowl.
Looks right, looks left, throws long on the right side toward the end zone, ball in the air.
Caught
Jackson Smith-Njigba's got it!
Yeah!
Touchdown, Jackson Smith-Njigba!
It was a record-setting performance for Jackson Smith-Njigba in the Rose Bowl, and this time around, he enters the season as Stroud's clear-cut #1 target. And Travion Henderson returns in the backfield after a 19-touchdown freshman season. But they'll have to hit the ground running in Week 1, a monster clash at the Shoe against the Fighting Irish.
It's going to be an electric atmosphere. Notre Dame has unbelievable tradition, but it's exciting. I think a lot of people are very excited to see that game in the Horseshoe.
They start the season with the Golden Domers, and they end the season with the Maize and Blue. Both games in Columbus. Ohio State hoping the beginning, the end, and everything in between comes up even better than roses.
Thank you very much, Chris Hassel. Let's welcome in CBS Sports college football writer Tom Fornelli for a little more on OSU. Let's dive a little deeper. Tom, there's probably 95% of teams in college football that would call OSU's 2021 season a successful one, but not Ryan Day. Take a listen to this.
Rose Bowl victory is a good year. It isn't at Ohio State. And so our three goals are beat the team up north, win the Big Ten championship, win the national championship. That's the goal. Those three things didn't happen last year.
11-2, won the Rose Bowl, but not good enough. Tom, is he setting the bar too high, or can this team really get the job done?
Oh, no, I don't think he's setting the bar too high at all. The three goals that he named there, beating Michigan, winning the Big Ten, and then winning a national title, I think two of those are just kind of ground floor expectations, and then you get to the college football playoff and you take your chances once you get there. And I look at this Ohio State team going into the 2022 season, and I do think it is a team very much capable of winning a national title. So for Ryan Day to be talking about a Rose Bowl season being a disappointment, it is kind of a head scratcher for anybody outside of Columbus, but I think in that building, everybody understands exactly what he's saying.
Let's talk about some of these players. C.J. Stroud is a favorite at plus 200 to win the Heisman. He's entering his second year as a starter, almost 4,500 yards last year. So what are your expectations for Stroud in 2022?
I think he's going to win the Heisman. I think he's the favorite for a reason, and I think he is, along with Bryce Young, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I think it works to his favor that Bryce Young won the Heisman last year, and we've seen time and time again when a player wins the Heisman, when it comes back for another season, the expectations for him are raised, and if he doesn't meet them, he gets punished for it by voters. So now you look at C.J. Stroud, who last year was second in the country in passing efficiency, second in yards per attempt, fourth in touchdown rate, fourth in touchdown interception ratio. He's just a very good player, and he is going to be on one of, if not the best offenses in the country. He's got the best receivers surrounding him. He's got one of the best running backs in the country behind him to hand it off to, and he's got some NFL players on his offensive line as well. I mean, honestly, when you go up and down the Ohio State depth chart on offense, it's an NFL roster, and Stroud is going to be the key behind it. He's going to be the one that's putting up all the numbers, whether it's in the passing game or the run game. And at the end of the year, he is going to have video game numbers, and Ohio State will be in the college football playoff in all likelihood. So he is the Heisman favorite for a reason, and I do think he is going to win it.
Yeah, he was fourth in the Heisman voting last season. Right after just 49 yards in 7 games of his sophomore season, Jackson Smith-Njigba broke out in 2021, over 1,600 yards. You saw the package there. He enters his junior year. What do you see as the floor and the ceiling for a guy who's now Stroud's favorite target?
Yeah, it's funny because Ohio State had both Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave drafted in the first round of the NFL draft last spring, and neither of them were Ohio State's best receiver last year. Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best wide receiver on this team, and that's saying a lot because of those 2 first-round picks. But there's also Julian Fleming, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Emeka Egbuka, who are all very good players. But Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best player on this, or the best receiver on this team, and he might be the best receiver on the country. The only thing that slowed him down last year is that there were too many mouths to feed. So he finished 10th in the nation in receptions and 30th in targets. But if you break that down to efficiency, he was the number one player in the country in yards per target at 14.3, and he was third in yards overall. This is a guy who took his limited opportunities because of who he had to share the ball with and made the most of them. He can line up in the slot. He can line up outside. He can beat you deep. He can beat you underneath. He can beat man coverage. He can find holes in the zone. There really is nothing a defense can do to stop him. And then you add in the fact that if they double team him, now you're leaving guys like Marvin Harrison and Julian Fleming in one-on-one situations that they can exploit. So it's one of the reasons why Ohio State's offense is so difficult to stop. And I think that come next spring, Jackson Smith-Njigba, like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, will be a first-round pick. And I think he'll be the first receiver off the board.
And he needs just 1,300 yards to surpass Michael Jenkins as the all-time receiver with Ohio State. Right, you mentioned running backs. Travion Henderson had over 1,500 all-purpose yards last season. He returns to that backfield. How big is that for what this offense wants to do?
Oh, it's huge, because as good as Ohio State is with Stroud and with its receivers, you do need to have balance on offense if you're going to win games and if you're going to get to the college football playoff and beat elite teams with good defenses. And Henderson is a very talented player on his own right, but he's also living the dream in that on the Ohio State offense, behind that offensive line, he's never facing a defense that can overload the box with defenders to try to stop the run because they have to worry too much about stopping the pass. So he's always got space to work. He's an elite player who, honestly, if he was playing somewhere else besides Ohio State and was the focal point of the offense, he would be somebody that would probably be considered more of a favorite to win the Heisman. I just think that in this offense, he's going to put up fantastic numbers and he's going to be a terrific player. It's just he's going to be living in the shadow of some of the other big names. But the fact is, he is one of the best running backs in the country. He's up there with Bijan Robinson at Texas and other names. So I think that, again, it's just there's no end to the spoils that this Ohio State team has on offense. It is an NFL offense when it comes to talent.
They opened the season at home to Notre Dame, a top 5 game right off the bat here, Tom. The line sitting at 14.5 for the Buckeyes, the total at 58 and a hook. What do you think of those numbers?
It's a great marquee matchup for the first week of the season, and you're thinking, wow, Ohio State, Notre Dame, this is going to be a close game. And then you see the spread at 2 touchdowns, and you know what? Lay the points with Ohio State because I don't think that spread is large enough. Like, this is it. Notre Dame's coming in. They've got Marcus Freeman. He's coached in the bowl game last year, but this is his first year as the head coach after Brian Kelly left for LSU. And Quincy Davis, their slot receiver, their starter, the top returning receiver from last year outside of tight end Michael Mayer, just tore his ACL in practice this week, which means Notre Dame's going to be without its star receiver. It's going to be limited offensively in the first game, and we don't know who's going to step in to fill those shoes. And that's not a great position to be in when you're going up against an Ohio State team that could wake up in the morning and put 35 on the board against just about anybody in the country. So the Irish, in order to win this game, are going to have to keep up on the scoreboard as far as scoring points. And I just don't see that happening because the one area that this Ohio State team kind of struggled in recent years was defensively. But I'm expecting a pretty big defensive improvement in 2022. So I think in that first game of the year, Ohio State is going to set the tone early for what their season's going to be. They're going to beat Notre Dame, and they're going to do it comfortably.
Yeah, they brought in Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State to be defensive coordinator to turn that defense around. Tom, when you look at the Buckeyes in terms of that futures market, I mean, wins set at 11. I mean, they've got good odds to win the Big Ten and to make the playoff and to win the national championship. I mean, is there a particular number that catches your eye in terms of their futures market?
The particular number is I'm betting all of them. I just think that that's how good this team is. They're the favorite in the Big Ten. Bet it. They're probably going to win the Big Ten. If they win the Big Ten, they're going to get to the playoff. So bet them to get to the playoff. And if they get to the playoff, honestly, when it comes to looking at the landscape for college football, the playoff, and national title contenders, I think there are 3 very good teams in the country: Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. But I think only Alabama and Ohio State are the 2 legitimate national title threats, and I think it's going to be one of those 2 hoisting the trophy at the end of the year. So whatever odds you can get them at right now, I would bet Ohio State to win everything. I mean, they're just that good.
That's why they're 1-2 in our poll, and that's why they're 1-2 in the preseason AP poll. He is CBS Sports college football writer Tom Fornelli talking OSU football as we hit number 2 in our preseason top 25. For more from Tom and Chip Patterson, be sure to check out the Cover 3 podcast. That is where the 2 talk college football all season long and all off season long. A busy off season is almost over. Latest episode features the first Camp Buzz segment, which is on Notre Dame in reaction to the AP preseason poll, as well as injury updates. Download and follow the Cover 3 podcast wherever you get your podcast audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.